Welcome to This Week in True Crime. Today we're going to be looking at a double homicide in Boston, a crucifixion in New Mexico, and the exhumation of H.H. Holmes, a notorious murderer and the creator of the Murder Castle. First, we'll be heading to Boston. On Friday, May 5th, police responded to reports of a man with a gun on the 11th floor of the McAllen building at 141 Dorchester Avenue in Boston. Police arrived at the location around 8:45 p.m. and entered the penthouse, where a man named Bompamum Texiera opened fire on them. Police returned fire, injuring the shooter. When the police did a sweep of the penthouse, they discovered two bodies. Dr. Richard Field and his fiancée, Dr. Lena Bolanos, who lived at the condo, had their hands bound and their throats slashed. Reports indicate there was a substantial amount of blood on the walls, and the killer had written a message of retribution on there as well. At the time of recording this video, the message has not been made public. The suspect, believed to have murdered Field and Bolanos, was taken to Tufts Medical Center and is expected to survive his gunshot wounds. He is facing 2 counts of murder and other charges. According to other reports, Field was able to send out a text message to a friend for help shortly before the murder. It is unknown exactly what this message said. Texiera tied up his victims and went around the home to cut up their photos and then slashed their throats. Police are still trying to determine the motive and hope the suspect will provide answers. Police also believe the suspect knew the victims and that he was in the apartment with their knowledge on the night of the murders. Getting into the penthouse would prove difficult if he did not know the victims, as a key is needed to get off on the 11th floor. Given the actions committed during the crime, it also seems to indicate that he was punishing them for something, whether real or imagined. Texiera is no stranger to trouble with the law, as he recently served 9 months for 2 unarmed bank robberies. According to the Boston Globe, he also reportedly told his ex-girlfriend that he wouldn't live long and that he was not a good person. The outcome of this investigation, whatever it might be, is going to prove interesting. Now we'll be heading to New Mexico and a case that's weird to say the least. On Monday, May 1st, 2017, workers from an early morning cleanup crew in Albuquerque heard someone screaming along the Paseo del Bosque trail. It is important to note that while this trail does have some rural areas, it is right in the heart of Albuquerque and right along the Rio Grande. The workers discovered a man who had been nailed between 2 trees similar to a crucifixion. He had 3-inch nails driven through his palms. He was taken to the hospital for his injuries, but reportedly the man was not cooperating with authorities. However, on Friday, May 5th, the man, who wants his identity protected, gave an interview to KRQE News 13 in Albuquerque. From there on out, the story just gets weirder. The man says he was walking on the trails around 8 a.m. on Monday, which he did often. He also says that 2 men approached him and took him off the trails at gunpoint. The men told the victim they were going to make him disappear. One of the men pulled out a hammer, grabbed one of the victim's hands and nailed it to a tree. He then took the other hand and nailed it to the other tree so the victim couldn't move. The victim then claims that one of the men grabbed a nerve in his neck, causing him to pass out. He then said he was coming in and out of consciousness and the attackers were frightened off when they heard someone else walking in the area. The victim says he was nailed to these trees for several hours before his rescuers found him. The man also says he was targeted for a reason and it all has to do with a real estate deal. He believes the men were sent to hurt him as a scare tactic and that they had threatened him in the past. While all of this sounds like it might be an elaborate Scooby-Doo plot, the police are still investigating. They do not believe it was cartel or drug related. In addition, they have not ruled out that the victim might have had someone do this to him on purpose, for one reason or another. The story provided by the victim just leads to more questions, and who knows how long it might be before we have answers. The name H.H. Holmes is probably familiar to many of you. He is, without a doubt, one of the most interesting and despicable monsters the country has ever witnessed. Today, he would be known as a serial killer, but the term had not been created when Holmes was murdering people in the late 1800s. Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, aka Herman Webster Mudgett, confessed to 27 murders and then later claimed that the number was closer to 130. Only 9 of these murders were confirmed, but some believe that the number of victims could actually be as high as 200. Many of the murders committed by this con artist doctor occurred in a large building in Chicago, which he created and then turned into a hotel. This building would be called the Murder Castle, and it was a true house of horrors. Many of the rooms did not have any windows. Some of the halls and stairways were dead ends. There were trapdoors, gas jets built into the walls, a disposal chute, and a kiln for getting rid of bodies down in the basement. Holmes is reported as saying, "I was born with the devil in me. I could not help the fact that I was a murderer no more than a poet can help the inspiration to sing. I was born with the evil one standing as my sponsor beside the bed where I was ushered into the world, and he has been with me since. Holmes tortured and killed many people in the murder castle and people outside of its walls before finally being brought to justice for his crimes. He was sentenced to death and was hanged on May 7th, 1896. Or was he? Holmes is in the news this week because there are members of his family today who are trying to put to rest the rumor that Holmes fled and escaped hanging and another body was buried in his place. The body in the grave was exhumed this week and there will be a DNA test to determine whether it was Holmes or not. That's it for this week in true crime. For more true crime information and news, please head to my website, aberrantnation.com, and follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Until next week,